Hi, and welcome to another episode of Kasper On BI. I'm really excited. Today we'll do something a little bit different. Today I'm talking to Simon Sabin. Today we talk all about community. Today we talk about conferences. Simon is the organizer and the founder of SQLBits, one of the biggest conferences in the world, probably the biggest conference in Europe around data. It's one of my favorite places. I've been going there for many years. So we'll talk about, Simon, how hard is it? What does community mean to you? Because, I mean, it's all based on volunteers. So it's a massive effort, but it's a massive payoff. I love going there, and I think so do a lot of other people. So with that, let's go talk to Simon. So, Simon, great to see you and great to talk to you virtually. I hope we'll see each other soon. We will see each other soon in a few months at when SQLBits is there. Great for having you. Can you do a little bit of introduction on yourself, SQLBits? What do you do in the day-to-day life?
Sure. Yeah. So, thanks for inviting me and having me on. I'm Simon Sabin. I've been working for data, I like to say 20 years, but every time I look back, I realize it's more like 26. I started off doing SQL Server back coming out of uni, and that's where I've come from. I now run a data consultancy. DevOps is my thing. So from a Power BI thing, like me and Kasper have had an interesting conversations over the past decades about what the hell Power BI is doing from a DevOps perspective, and
or a lack of,
just getting there slowly, like things progressing. So that's my day job. We help companies do better data engineering, and then in my spare time, 15 years ago, I decided to start this thing called SQLBits, and that for probably 6 months of the year adds a little bit of workload to the day job, and then in my spare time, last year I started racing cars, which is this thing here, which was quite cool, and I've got a couple of kids, 3 of them, 3 boys, so that keeps me entertained. So last year with racing cars,
much cooler.
Boys.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably much cooler for daddy to race cars than it is to do tuning indexes on SQL Server.
Yes. Although I was actually did a podcast yesterday with Ree on Data Exposed, and when I mentioned the fact that Daddy was doing a podcast, like they were like, that was quite cool. So
yeah, for me the best thing for my kids is like, you work at Microsoft, who makes Minecraft? That's it, the pinnacle of everything. So
yeah, and I think for many years, I think my kids have been always confused. So I've been an MVP for 20 years or something, maybe not 17, something like that, and an RD. And so for many years, all my kids thought I worked for Microsoft. Even my relative, everyone like, so I've got a Windows laptop. Like, how do you do this on Windows? And it's like, just because no, that's not me.
No. So you were saying SQL Server straight out of uni, but that must have been a little bit of a while. What's SQL Server? How did you get started?
So my first job was for a consultancy, and we were migrating from FoxPro, a file-based database system, to SQL Server 6.5. And so actually, like my real background was way before that, in that I have to confess, like I probably need to go to the confessional and go, I've sinned. I used to use Access.
Oh no, you shouldn't have said this. This is going to haunt you.
It's not going to haunt me. So it's going to haunt me to the extent that, like, in an MVP summit many years ago, we had a game of I'm not sure you were there. We had a game of American football with the SQL product team, and there's a guy called Mark Souza, who big guy in Microsoft and in SQL Server, and I might have taken him out. Like Mark's not the biggest of guys. Like I'm 6'2", like, and not slight, and I took him out, and in the MVP summit, like the following day, I'd actually gone to a DevOps session, so I was missing the SQL one. But he told me that I'd been revoked my SQL Server MVP and made an Access MVP.
Yeah.
So that amused many people. But I think Access is awesome. It's a real end user thing, and I wrote this system for my mum, who was a teacher that managed work experiences for all her kids, and we built a system so she could track all 200 kids every year that went off to do work experience. And I look now at the Power Apps world, and everything's come circle. And
only
Power
actually
Apps
things, if you ask me, things have gone worse because now people use SharePoint list as access. So,
well, yeah. Although we all know that like SharePoint lists, like it doesn't really matter. It all ends up stored somewhere, and like as long as you've got the data stored somewhere, like it's okay. As long as it's not in like notepad text files in places.
On your local folder. Yeah, cool. So but SQLBits. Can you share some numbers? Like it's one of the biggest conferences. I think probably the biggest data conference in Europe. I don't think there's anything else, and probably maybe. So
when I look at it, so because we do so many sessions, from a content perspective, I think that we are the largest data conference in the world. We have 300 plus sessions, 300 plus speakers over the 5 days, and that just makes us the biggest. So we're bigger than PASS, we're bigger than like lots of the conferences, just because we go for like numbers of sessions. And we made this call a long time ago that most conferences focus on like the mainstream things, which is fine. Like we all like a query tuning session, we all like a DAX session, or like back in the day an MDX session, whatever. But there are always edge things like streaming, like DevOps, like testing, like governance, all of these things that don't have the popular vote, but there are still enough people that are interested. So we've always taken the view of having a breadth of sessions that allow everybody to get what they want, which means that causes me a lot of headache in terms of the fact that for 15 years we've recorded all the content, and when you start recording like 15 rooms, that's a lot of videos, lots of cameramen and sound men and all that stuff. So it's a challenge.
And sound issues.
Yes. So Kasper's obviously alluding to the fact that the model we've always tried to make is that I hate conferences. Like I don't know what you think, but like conferences are the most like horrendous places to be in. That they're just masses of people, anxiety about where to go and what to do and how to find things. It's really like overwhelming in many ways.
If you go to the big ones like the Ignites and you have to walk for an hour to go to one room to the other.
Yeah, I mean, I went to Ignite in Chicago, and just remember going.
That was big.
Yeah, it was like 30,000 people. And you've got like it's like leaving a football stadium. You've got 30,000 people coming like down a walkway. Like, okay, we're not at the 30,000 people level, but one of the things we've always tried to do is have all the session rooms very close to the main space, and we always have this main expo space, so we don't have like an expo and an eating area and a sort of networking space. It's all in the same space, but then that means that we want the rooms close, and most venues don't have that. So we've been trying over the years to build structures that mean that we can do that. And I think you were obviously alluding to it when we went to Liverpool and we came up with these great ideas of domes that we'd have a big exhibition hall and we'd have these big blow up domes that acted as session rooms. And the sound bleed was a bit of an issue. And it's a challenge when we've got a big, like 12,000 square meter exhibition space. How do we put session rooms in there and manage the sound? And I think we're getting there. Nice thing about the SQLBits this year is that there's going to be 3 of those, and the other 9 rooms are proper rooms that are in a different part of the space. But yeah, sound's a challenge, and we really try and focus on making sure you can hear, because you've got to concentrate.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back to the beginning. What made you start it?
What made me start it? So I was a lone DBA data guy, like doing this FoxPro thing, and I had developers around me that did sort of VB, C#, well, C# then, not then, and the realization is you're on your own. You know, if you want to go and find answers to things, it's really hard. So there were things called newsgroups back then. Like, many of the folks probably haven't got a clue what a newsgroup is. But also there was a thing called Experts Exchange, which is like a forum thing. So I was involved in that, and there were user groups, and there was a group in the UK that had done a thing called Developer Day, and it was a free Saturday. They would get the Microsoft venue, the local office, and they would get people to speak, and people could rock up, and Microsoft would pay for the food, and you could do this free Saturday. So we thought, well, let's do one for data. So me and a guy called Tony Rogerson, another fellow MVP that just happened to live in the same village as me, we sat in the pub and went, maybe we could do this thing. It's like stuff about SQLBits. So that's how SQLBits started. So we started on this free Saturday, and I always wanted to do a bit different. And so we said, let's do sponsorship. So we got a few companies to sponsor, which meant that we could give every attendee a book. So everyone walked away with some dead trees, and they got a book, and that was the start.
Actually, that's also one of the things that is. So I think there's a few things to SQLBits that make it a bit different. Well, actually, there's a lot of things that make it different than any other conference. But I mean, a lot of people like it. I mean, it's always the talk of the town, and everyone wants to go. And that's a few things. It's usually in and around London. We'll get back to that in a bit. But also it's one free day, which is also not that common. Like one free day is pretty amazing. So the Saturday is always free, and there's a lot of people who are really excited about that. That's also a bit different. What made you do that?
So the realization is that everybody needs to learn, and I think it's even more prevalent nowadays. Like we're not project managers that we can master PowerPoint and Excel, and that's it. That's our job done. Like, we don't need to learn any new technology. Like in our industry, like everything changes all the time. So to keep up, you've got to keep learning. And so many people don't have budget, like don't have time or budget to go to these things. So if you as an individual want to make your world better, then we want to provide that thing. And so providing it free was the starter for it. And then over the years, we started adding training days, which meant that we really tried to work on it. Because we were running this as a not-for-profit, we were trying to work on how can we get revenue to pay for the Saturday. So we ended up with this model where essentially we could build the paid days on the week, so that we could have the free day on the Saturday. And the general thinking is that if you're taking the day off work, your boss, you probably have to have a conversation with the boss, and so there must be some perceived value in doing that, and therefore you can probably get some money to attend. So that's why it's paid during the week and free at the weekend. And that's why we've grown, and now it's 5 days of over 2,000 people.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So I think many of us, we've had this conversation often before, but many people maybe don't have a clue of what actually goes into organizing something like SQLBits. Can you give us an idea?
Oh gosh, there is a big team. Well, it's not a big team actually. There's a little team of some really hardworking people that go into. Just the sessions is a beast. We had like 1,000 sessions, I think, submit this year. So trying to choose those 1,000 sessions, and if you can imagine you've got 1,000 Word documents, and you've got to go and figure out like how you've got a good distribution of Power BI sessions, like Sentinel sessions, like Azure DevOps sessions, SQL sessions, Postgres sessions, like Databricks sessions. Like how do I get a good balance across? I'm a data guy, so I want it to be all nicely smooth and even and balanced. So we try. That's the one thing that over the years we are trying more and more. It used to be that we'd have like spreadsheets all over the place, and like now we've got sessionized for the call for papers, but we still need some manual thing to try and go, we want this distribution of sessions. So that's sessions. Once we've done that, we've then got like 300 speakers to manage. So like everyone's got questions, so you've got to manage that. The venue, we've got to find a venue, we've got to deal with like food, we've got to deal with like setting up AV and all these rooms. Sponsors, we've got like 20, 30 sponsors that we need to engage with. And then we need to get tickets and attendees. And there are, because we are small and it's not for profit. We are run by volunteers, and that's a challenge in the fact that people are doing most of it in their spare time. Over the years, we've employed more people to help us in certain regards as we get bigger, but it takes us a long time. And the challenge now is that we're of a size that if things go wrong, it can be a challenge. It's a multi-million-pound business.
Well, thank God everything went okay COVID-wise.
Yeah. I think because we run things really tight, we don't have large commitments. So we were quite lucky, and we were super lucky from a timing perspective in that people had registered, and it was a question of how we could flip it to a virtual conference. That was what we needed to do, and luckily, I think the 13 years of investment in goodwill put us in good stead in that people were people love SQLBits. It's one thing I can't step away from. I'm always aghast at like comments like you're smiling is like just the epitome is like,
Yeah.
we do something very different that people just seem to
No, it's just a family almost.
gravitate
Like
towards.
the same people, you see the same people. I mean, there's a big conference, but still you see the same people every year. And yeah, it's like it's always a nice atmosphere. And as I was said before, you do things differently, like the pub quiz, and like it's just nice. But it's yeah,
I think it's personal. I think that's what
yeah,
that's what people have said over the years. That we're not a media company. We are the industry. The people running it are other data people, and so because we understand that, our focus is on the attendee and making sure the attendee experience is as good as people like. And so, like, we try not to be that big conference feel. We try to make it as comfortable as possible. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah. That makes sense. So, I mean, I think you kind of already talked about it, but like it's a massive time drain from away from potentially making more money or spending more time with family and kids. So what keeps you going all these years? And not just you, but many of the volunteers, like they've been there forever too. We've seen some changes, but mostly same people.
yeah, and I think we what keeps us going is that there's just this need. I mean, and everyone loves it, and people think, oh, surely people have learned about X, Y, and Z already, and it's like, yeah, maybe that generation, but there's like always people coming in that need to learn about new stuff, and there's always new stuff to learn, so there's always a need, and our focus really is to try and make it easier for us so that we can try and repeat it, but um, if you speak to any of the other organisers, so there's a core team of us: Alex, Annette, Darren, Jonathan, now Tracy and Rob. That we we I try and keep pushing the boat. We try and keep improving. Like you talk about the sound thing, like every year. Like if we go back to the disastrous year that we had with like Liverpool, every year we like iterate, and it's real. Like my whole business is about like continual improvement, DevOps, change, like
Yeah, yeah,
with like feedback loop. Like the problem with that, our feedback loop for SQLBits is 12 months. Like although um, one of the things you will see is the fact that like we are continually doing that during the event. Like we take feedback, we try and respond on it during the event so we can like address it. Um, and yeah, we try and make it simpler so that we can keep going, because it does make you happy once you're there. It's a bit like, not that I've given birth, but it's a bit like sort of giving those events that are traumatic in the execution, but when you look back at it, you've got fond memories because you get a good thing out of it, and
yeah,
everyone's love of SQLBits is one of the reasons for doing it.
yeah. Because every time when I see you guys actually at SQLBits, you're all exhausted. So, so can you actually enjoy it the moment, or you just want to go to bed and sleep?
Um, at the moment, it's a bit chaotic. So this the 3 months before is when it's nuts. And I guess I'm fortunate in the fact that during the event I don't need to do much from an execution perspective, so
Mm.
I can enjoy it more as long as things don't pop up, and we can enjoy it. And we still enjoy it even if we're knackered.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So let's talk about one topic that always comes up to location. Location is always a tough discussion, and I think, I mean, if you ask from my standpoint, there's two audiences. There's the people, and actually I want to ask you that question too. I think someone shared, is it you or Alex, who shared like distribution of people who are coming to the conference. So it has to do with that too, because probably international audience wants London. UK people don't want London because they say, well, I've heard, I went to Liverpool, Manchester, all the smaller places too. I even forgot the name, which Alex is going to kill me for. But
Telford. I think Telford is the one you're missing.
Telford, exactly. Yes.
Where Alex lives.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. That's why he's going to kill me. But yeah, so the people in the UK, they want spread out. Is that fair assumption or?
Yeah, I think we have made the view that not everyone lives in London. Like, it's a fairly obvious thing, and therefore we need to move it around the country. The challenge now is the fact that there aren't many venues that we can use. So we're largely in places that are large exhibition spaces. And it's not just that, especially for the Saturday. And back at probably about 8 years ago, we got approached by the Isle of Man to Mr. Webb was helping us at that time, and he was on the committee, and he was doing some stuff in the Isle of Man. I won't say why, but you know what happens in the Isle of Man, and they were like, well, let's do SQLBits in the Isle of Man, and we went and looked at it, and we realised that it would have been lovely, but for people to get there on the Saturday for the free day, they'd have still had to spend a significant amount of money on travel, on ferry or flights over to the Isle of Man. And that was a bit of a sort of red line that we didn't want to cross. So the ability to have the Saturday around the country means that people local can travel, and the cost of that travel is not significant. And people can therefore stay over, and hotels can be cheaper. So the whole cost of accessing the event is less, and that's why we move it around. Commercially, like, it would make a lot more sense for us to run it into London every year.
Yeah.
But I think that would alienate a lot of people. Interestingly, we had one company yesterday register 43 people to fly over from Norway to go on Saturday.
Wow.
So they have obviously figured out that as a company, like, they can go and pay a bit for flying over, actually not pay anything to us.
Yeah.
Attend for free on the Saturday, and they've probably got a great company event coming to SQLBits on the Saturday. So yeah, 43 people. I was like, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, definitely. So what are some of your, and actually I really would love to go to Edinburgh, but that would be a nice spot. And it's obviously completely the other side. So
yeah, Scotland's something we've toyed at, and we haven't found a venue that works for us
interesting.
yet. One of our so Scotland is definitely a consideration, and I know that some people, international people, haven't done the Scotland thing, and so therefore that might be a bit of a draw. And it's been a real eye opener this year, is that looking at the stats, probably about 60% come from outside of the UK.
Wow. Yeah.
So Nordics is massive, like Holland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark seem to love us.
It's always
because
like I'm not surprised. I love it too. But there are some really big conferences here in the Netherlands too, especially around Power BI. And although there's less data, SQL Saturday has been a while when we actually had it. Also, the SQL Saturday in Netherlands is really well. I think last time there was like 800 people or something. SQL Saturday Netherlands. It was pretty
yeah,
massive.
it's one of those things. Like, I think you can run 600, 700 person like events quite. Things just become a problem when you start getting like above those limits,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
especially if you want lots of rooms, that's the big problem.
Hmm.
If you just want 700 people in 5 rooms, that's probably quite easy. Um, but yeah, so we will carry on moving around the country. Um,
Makes
there's a
sense.
few new venues being built that
Oh, that's interesting. Cool.
um, might make us move to different places. Um,
Nice.
but
So, what are some of your highlights over the years? What are some of the things you really loved that makes you come back and do it?
um, I think that just like the the volume of people that just enjoy it. I mean, the comments that we get time and time again that it's the best conference people go to, and it's not just attendees. I mean, we were doing the sponsor round late last year, and the conversations that people had were, yeah, it's the best conference on the planet, and we just seem to be doing something that makes people very relaxed, very comfortable, and enjoy the experience. And just, I'm a very, I, I find it very difficult to take those compliments. I, yeah, it's always odd when you're walking around and you get these people going, "Oh, this is really good," and it's like, "Thank you." I'm not British, don't take that very well, but it's really humbling, and just the amount of effort people put in, um, seeing seeing the effort that sponsors put in to brand their stands, seeing the effort that like companies put in to go for the fancy dress on the Friday for the party. It's just insane. And yeah, I'm I'm all about the learning, and people need to carry on learning, and therefore we need to carry on doing it. I would like to do more. We would like to enable more, and I think when we look back, it's not one particular highlight. It's just like the trail of, and it's not devastation. It's the trail of learning, not learning, but like user groups, people, speakers that I think have grown up with SQLBits. They've fostered their career. They've found jobs. They've like developed themselves, and I think that SQLBits has been a big part of lots of people's lives over the
Oh
past
yeah.
15 years. Some people meet partners, some people get jobs. I mean, lots of things happen. Um,
Yeah.
it's been quite amazing.
So is that what, like, we kind of skirted around, we talked about some of these things, but is that what community means for you too? Like the community that a lot of people talk about these conferences, like as a community, is that what it means to you too?
Um, yeah, so the community is an interesting thing. I think enabling people to, like, whether this is community, to get the answers they need, find the people that they can connect with. Um, we don't. I don't think we've. I don't think we've got a real active SQLBits community. I think we are just part of the bigger data world, and helping just people to connect and form connections and little communities and little connections is really what it's about. Because I think if those develop, then it helps you as an individual, and you can be better. You can achieve more. You can do more.
Yeah.
If you've got people
That's
to support you.
it's quite interesting to see, and it's also quite interesting to see how it changes. Like if you make some wrong decisions, look at SQL Pass, for example, then how mighty they can fall, right? It's
Yeah,
really tough, and it's tough to make good decisions too. Like I think as long as yeah,
it is tough, and I think we are founded in we have a depth of foundation in terms of what we do, which is interesting because it means that, like, the sound thing, we'll go back to the sound thing, like that was a monumental screw up on our part, like, but because we had this depth of foundation of, like, belief and support within the people that knew that we are trying to do the right thing and knew that our approach to things, there was a lot of understanding about what we were trying to do, and so we got away with it, if you want to say that.
yeah,
The same with COVID. I think the reason we survived COVID was that, like, I will be honest and say we did pretty much the same thing as past did, but I think the depth of our belief and our ethos meant that people supported us and we got through.
yeah.
So we were
Yeah,
very
that makes
lucky.
sense. And then maybe the other thing to is like you talk about sound, you talked about learnings. So is that the reason why the Power Hour now has its own slot? Last last year we had other speakers come complain about the noise we were making. So
So you have your own auditorium,
yeah,
um, and there is, yeah, we might be putting some things up against you, but yeah, you are definitely the Power BI Power Hour is definitely the noisiest sessions by any stretch.
yeah,
I was yeah, I was musing. I was watching the one from Liverpool. No, yes, last few days ago for some reason, and man, it's raucous. It's just not many are recorded, um,
yeah,
so this one was recorded,
for good
and
reasons. Yeah,
it was. Yes, I'm not. When I look at what Chris was saying about a certain competitor, I was like, oh, we recorded that. Wow.
yeah,
Okay. Um,
yeah.
but
We have been banned from some, not really banned, but at one point the marketing team didn't find it that good to do it at some internal sales conference again. So yeah.
yes.
But it's
Um,
always fun, so I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so let's talk. I mean, I think we already talked about that enough. But some lowlights, and how did you recuperate that or from that?
um, low lights. Um, like being really honest in this sort of world of, like, mental health and stuff. I took a time off in, 5 years ago. Oh God, I think, because it yeah it was too much for me, and so I took a step back, and the guys ran it without me, um, and I think that's the great thing about the team is that we've got a lot of support for each other,
Yeah,
and it's really hard to run things on a shoestring. We don't we're not a company that's got, like, a purse of, like, X million dollars that if it goes wrong we can just soak it up by just not spending some stuff on marketing over there. Like, we are um, we are running things on a type. Actually, the best highlight, the best low light, which, if probably will be unanimous across the team, We rocked up to Telford, and we're there on the build day waiting for some things to arrive, and it's like, where are the domes? Like, so we were putting these domes up, and it's like, where are they? So we call Gary, the guy that is supplying them, and he's like, what do you mean? Like, it's next month.
Uh-oh.
No, it's like this week. And at some point, we were moving dates around because we were trying to align with a few things, so venues or what have you. And we'd already started the conversation with getting the domes, and we'd put together a contract, and we changed the date, and we hadn't changed the date on the domes contract. And so we were there, and we didn't have any session rooms. Luckily, like, the guy wasn't booked, and so he could rock up the M1 and put these domes in. Like, that was yeah, definitely we dodged a bullet. And I think, touch wood, I don't know what it is, but we do seem to dodge lots of bullets. I don't know whether it's just we have a lot of good karma, but yeah.
I mean, it must be really tough because there's so many things that can go wrong. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we're now of the size that, like, it's one of these percentage games. Like, the likelihood of, like, someone tripping up is likely as someone like X, Y, and Z. Like,
Yeah.
like code of conduct, the likelihood of that being broken, yeah, sadly quite high. So we have to deal with those things. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's when you get a lot of people, strange things happen. So, and how do you get the help like that you need? Because you have a core team, but there's many more people around it because it's a time commitment and people need to come help, and it's not like, is that a problem, or do you always manage to find?
So it's interesting. Like, last year we struggled to get help for some reason. So a core aspect of SQLBits is the fact that we don't use sort of attendance and paid for help as much. The people that are helping in rooms, that are helping doing registration, are like attendees that are from the community, from the conference, that means that there's a good rapport. Like, I think attendees appreciate that because they're engaging with people that are also attendees, and so it just part of the ethos and the approach. And we really struggled last year. I don't know whether that was a post-COVID thing. This year, I think, supposedly, like, it's been blown out of the water. Like, people just want to come. They get free access to the conference, so there's benefits to everybody. And that's the thing. It's a two-way thing. We see the value, and therefore value that. We're going to have to grow and get more volunteers, and more volunteers that are involved more of the time. We added so Rob Sewell and Tracy have joined the committee this year to help with things.
That's why we have a PowerShell commandlet to get the agenda.
That would be Rob. Like,
yeah.
If you can't do it with PowerShell and Pester, it's not worth doing.
Exactly.
So yeah.
We
so they've come on board and that's because so many of these things are time sinks. We've got we've got a marketing person on board, and there's lots of people that are on board to help get things done. Do you like the PowerShell commandlet?
Well, I'm not a PowerShell guy, so I mean, honestly, I don't do much work, actual work anymore. I'm just a program manager that does PowerPoints and OneNote. That's it. I'm even struggle with DAX these days, which is a pain.
You
Yeah,
can't admit to that.
yeah. Well, I can. I mean, it's okay. I mean, I don't do it enough. It's like if you don't do it enough, you have to get back into it. And I actually had a conversation with Alberto a couple of weeks. Actually, I want to talk to you about that too. But I had a conversation with Alberto some time ago, and yeah, we were talking about you were talking about technology changes, but even like languages like DAX, they change over time. And yeah, it gets. Rob Colley was talking about it. The DAX 1.0, 2.0, and now we're at DAX 3.0, which is, and Alberto didn't really think about it that way. But yeah, for me, I'm still old school DAX because that's when I learned
Right.
it. But if I look at some DAX stuff now at their site, it's completely changed. Like the way that they write it is completely different.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those things. And there's an industry. I don't know how we deal with that enough. In that, I think you have to. We are pushing for engineers that have more skills. But the challenge is if you don't use those skills enough, those skills go out of date, and like you end up then struggling or not doing the best, using the best thing. I mean, it's like all this new Windows stuff in DAX. Like how many blog posts does that now make redundant because you can
Yeah,
do things in a very different way?
yeah.
It's it, and that's a bit. I think that's a bigger challenge from a knowledge documentation perspective. Like
Well, actually,
I've
that also ties into a question I wanted to ask you because I was talking about it with Alberto too. What to you? What is the ratio? And again, it goes back to the hard part: session selection. We were talking. It is like I have a session that I haven't really changed in many years. It's about the basics. No, it's about the basics. The basics of DAX, and probably now, you're absolutely right. Things have changed a little bit with the windowing functions and what more is to come. But how do you choose? Because I think we love to get people to come and talk about data marts and the latest and greatest things. But it's equally important for them to understand, like, okay, actually, what is a star schema? Like, how do you model? So you want a cool and flashy, and the PMs want to talk about the coolest and latest and greatest features. The MVPs want to talk about the latest and greatest, but there's a need for the basics. Like that basic DAX section, I don't even submit it anymore because it never gets selected.
Yeah, it's interesting. Before this, we were talking about like the prevalence of Power BI across non-data people, like, and that there was a huge need for that level of content, which is just 101 stuff. And I think so. I remember back in the day, like when we were looking at SQLBits, there was an interesting piece when we compared us to like a Microsoft event, and that was all about the latest and greatest. And it was always a real challenge to go, okay, we want to have a relationship with Microsoft and have Microsoft come and do content, but like actually, like I felt that we needed to have the content that people needed to know day in, day out, like
Yeah,
that depth of stuff that is probably 10 years old, but is like the core stuff. And so we made a conscious decision that that's what we needed to provide, as well as some of the fluffy, cool, new, shiny stuff that, and I think you need a breadth of both. And I think you also need the PM level stuff, which is, oh, this is the shiny new thing. Then
yeah,
you need the real world, like Alberto, actually, like that sucks if you do it that way. This is how you need to do it
yeah.
because, like,
Like his famous "you burn in hell when you use BiDi" comment.
right. yeah, and it's a challenge, isn't it? It's like some of those things, like if they're written down or said, are black and white, and there's so many like things behind that like as we were saying earlier, like as technologists, we realize that there's a lot of depth, and we want to spend 50 minutes explaining what all those depth things are, and not just do the 5 minutes. Yeah, bi-directional is burning hell. Like how do you find the balance between both of those things? And we we have a content story for the event. This is the sort of content that we want. Do we have it right? Don't know.
I mean, it's really hard. Like even for me, like actually making the content. Like, what do I want to talk about? Yeah, of course I want to talk about the latest and greatest features, but there's already so many people doing that. So maybe I shouldn't. Like, this is why my security session is it's not the same, but it's an evolution. I just change it because I mean the world of security changes so rapidly, continuously. And new features get added, but also new requirements from customers. So I keep updating it, and I actually changed the name too of the session so that it got picked sooner. But I mean, it's for us. It's also a challenge because everyone wants to talk about the new windowing functions now, and data marts and all the cool new things. Like I was talking to Benny, who does the user conference in Belgium, and he said like, yeah, everyone had a data mart session in their submittance. So
yeah, and that's where like getting Rob on board, and this year we've got content owners that own specific areas, and a lot of it is about going, actually we need content of this structure, as opposed to we are just going to take the content that we're given. So yeah, we do get a lot of people go, why didn't you pick my session? And so, well, actually, let's have a look. Oh yes, you submitted a session on like data marts. There were 20 other data mart sessions. Like, therefore, like, you're not in the you're in the majority. You've got to go and find something that other people don't want to speak about. But I don't know what you see when you speak to customers, but I think we often live in a bubble, like especially if you've been in the MVP world and stuff, and the sort of the experts. I think we live in a bubble that skill level is like up here.
oh yeah,
When actually I look at customers, and most customers are just struggling with stuff down here.
yeah.
And I think we need to do more of it.
And that's really tough. Like I still remember, and it's been a long time ago when I did my first session, my speaking. I think in the first one, I think it was probably like level 600. And people said, like, I think like Andre Kamen was in the audience, and Henk from Netherlands, they were in the audience for my first session. They said, well, it was good, but I think half the room didn't really get most of the content. So you have to just really think about it. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's hard for us. It's hard for us because we live in this day to day. And that's actually this also part of the discussion I was having with Alberto, because I feel like we're scaring a lot of people away with some of the DAX stuff. Because I mean, if you go to their website, they have some amazing DAX patterns like market basket analysis, but it's pages of DAX. Like, it's really cool and it's really amazing, and sometimes you just need it. But as you said, a lot of people just need the basics.
Yeah, it's that. I think we all try and get to the point that we can, and this is something we're trying to do. Like, my business is trying to simplify complex down so that an end user can do DevOps data testing, like but not have to have a PhD in testing. And I think that's the challenge, is how do you do it so that people can achieve it. That being said, I think we often focus on the perfect solution, oh, don't do like DAX like this because the formula engine won't work well. It'll be best. The storage engine needs to do this, and it's like who gives a shit? I've got a model with 1 million rows in it. It's not going to matter. Okay, if I've got 1 billion rows, maybe. And so,
I mean, it's quite funny the way that you say this, because we know the numbers. For example, I can't share the numbers, but the majority of the data sets in Power BI are really small. Of course, I mean, it's not a surprise. The majority of the data sets in Power BI are pretty small, so you don't need that. And the Vertipack engine is so forgiving. You can do a lot of shit, and it's still blazing fast. So yeah, I totally agree. All right, so maybe the last one. I have a lot of I won't say a lot, but the majority of my listeners are from US. Actually, if you look at the stats. So how would you convince them to come to SQLBits?
Because excuse me, because flights are cheap. Accommodation in the UK is generally cheaper than in the US.
Yeah.
So you can attend SQLBits for way less. I think we did some analysis a year or two ago. Steve Jones did a blog post about this. And even with travel and accommodation, you would be paying for, it would be 50% the cost of attending a conference in the US. Everyone loves SQLBits. So not only is it cheaper, from a quality of conference, and you can figure out and understand why people think SQLBits is the best conference on the planet. And you can dress up and go to a party. We've got board game night on the Wednesday. We've got a pub quiz on the Thursday. Literally, if you land on the Wednesday, you be fed and entertained from Wednesday till Saturday. And all you got to do is get there and find a bed.
Sunday morning until Sunday morning. Yes.
Yeah. So that's the thing that we've tried to make it as inclusive as possible. So come and enjoy and figure out why SQLBits is the best conference. The breadth of content, I think, is also, we talked about content, and we, as data engineering, me being a data engineer and understanding, we try and are doing the whole thing from sort of classic relational all the way to Power BI with the analytics and data transformation in the middle, all of that shizzle. If you're in the data space, then SQLBits is definitely the place to go. Don't be put off the fact it's SQL. It's really just all about data.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I totally agree. I love to go. I think I've been coming now. It is probably my 13th or 12th or something that I've been going. So it's pretty nice. I love it. So I want to ask you one more question that's not necessarily about Power BI, but I do ask it all the time on everyone. What is your most exciting feature of Power BI in the last year?
Really geeky.
Yeah.
Web.headers. I was very excited about when I read Chris's post. So I love Power BI. I do it a lot for doing mashup stuff. So we did a load of stuff. So my car racing stuff, they produce all the race reports in PDF. So I've got this amazing thing that goes off and scrapes PDF files and gets the tables, and I love my iterative function stuff. And you also need to make some web requests, and probably 50% of the web services that we engage with aren't OAuth, and you need a bit of a hand cranking. Now you could go and write your own connector, but I was really hopeful that web headers would give us what I wanted. Annoyingly, it doesn't seem to return all the headers. So that I'll just say 2, because that doesn't actually satisfy what I need. The other is I just learned about function.invoke after. So interestingly, the Swoogu, so we use this registration site called Swoogu. They've got an API which is great, but they have throttling, and by default, like, we've got to a level that we will just hit their throttle, and so I've implemented an exponential retry thing that allows the throttling to work. So yeah, I get quite a bit geeky and dirty in Power Query.
Yeah, so you're definitely onto the Power Query train too.
Yeah, I'm being very. I'm a frustrated programmer at heart, and I do like the fact that Power Query is this functional programming language. Like, people probably don't even realize that. It's quite nice. It's amazing, really, given the fact that it was from a project that died. But there you go. Interesting how things evolve.
I think that the project was way ahead of its time back then.
Yeah.
So, but now we're back to going there. So it's pretty cool to see. All right, cool. Well, I really want to thank you for your time. I love chatting to you, and hopefully I'll see you again at SQLBits. I will see you again at SQLBits. Yeah, people can still register. Let me go to SQLBits.com. Is there anything online too?
Yeah, so it's hybrid. So if you don't want to travel, then you can attend online, and there'll be you can have a link for like registering as a Kasper BI link, give you a discount.
So that's even better for everyone here.
Yeah.
All right.
So we hope we can see you all there.
Yeah. Thank you, Simon, for your time.
Cheers. Thanks, Kasper. Always great.
And that concludes another episode of Kasper On BI. I hope you liked it. It's a bit different, talking about community and conferences and what it takes to organize one of the biggest conferences around. Also, one of my favorites. I love to go to SQLBits. I've been there many times before. I hope I get to see many of you there. If not, there's a virtual side of it too. So go to SQLBits.com. We'll put some links in the description. Maybe we'll even get some discount for you. That will be pretty amazing. So with that, many more to come this year. I'm looking forward to talking to you all and seeing you here, and hopefully we can learn together. So if you like it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It will really help me and the channel grow this year. So with that, I'll see you next time.